Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade.
We chronicled the distinct memories of our childhood in our book, While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s, which takes you on a notably historic journey through that often forgotten decade. We also want to hear about your experiences during the 1950s. We will feature guests whose special stories of that decade will bring to mind magical moments of reflection, some with tears, some with smiles, but above all, a good dose of laughter.
We would like you to chat with us as we bring to mind the sights and sounds so familiar to that time in history. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us again on this, our number 45 broadcast of the 1950s Fun Chat. Jackie and I have a great time bringing to life the stories of the 1950s, your stories, individual stories. They're not the stories of corporate America. They're not the stories of advertising. They're the stories of you and the stories of us, and which makes this whole program so interesting because you can perhaps identify with many of the stories and many of the features that the guests share in our broadcasts. So today, Jackie, what's happening as we go forth in this broadcast today?
I'll tell you what's happening as soon as I take care of some housekeeping situations. Okay. That is, viewers, while you're perusing our screen, note at the bottom where the little www.whilethewindmillwatch.com is, the little banner is running across the bottom. We hope that you will go to this website. It tells a lot about our book, While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s. And it also tells a little bit about our vendors and about Janine and me. And as you look at the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a beautiful North Dakota sunset, which wraps around that book. And down on the bottom, you see a little white spot. That is a very important little white spot, because if you could look at it more closely, you'll see that it says it is a 2022 Independent Press Award winner as a distinguished favorite in the category of regional nonfiction. We were awarded that last April, which was about a year after we first published our book. So we are really excited to have been honored in this way. And more excitement, we are going to introduce you our guest right now. Her name is Anna Schmadeke. She was born in 1953 in Germany. Her father was an American GI who met and married a beautiful German woman, her mother, while he was stationed in Germany. Anna was born in Germany while her father was back in the States. And when she was 6 months old, Anna and her mother came to the United States. Now, Anna was raised on a farm 5 miles west of Cherokee, Iowa. And right now she lives in Marcus, Iowa. Mm-hmm. Anna and her husband, Bruce, have one daughter who gave them 2 beautiful grandchildren, and Jaron and Brenna, before the daughter passed away, sadly. Mm-hmm. Anna is a retired educator and a veteran of that career for over 40 years. Welcome, Anna. Glad.
Hi, Anna.
Hello, everyone.
Anna, was there anything in your childhood that was influential in your adult professional life?
Yes, very much so. When I was 5, my sister, who was 4, was a typical child. She was running, talking, and so forth. And she had diabetes then, and a medical accident happened. A nurse accidentally gave her an overdose of insulin, and she went into a coma, became severely brain injured, epileptic, and so forth. There was no special education at that time. And so my sister had to relearn to walk, talk, and so forth. And I saw my parents do that. And then they hired a retired teacher, Mrs. Seipel. I believe she was a kindergarten teacher who was retired. And she came in 2 times a week to tutor my sister. And I sat beside Mrs. Seipel, and she would say, okay, Anna, when I'm gone, during the days I'm not here, do this. And
Uh-huh.
I did that. And so special education has been the love of my life.
Oh,
Mhm.
what a neat story, Anna, and
Mhm.
how that could imprint on your life
Yes, very
so
much so.
effectively that it
Hmm.
became the profession that you chose.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So tell us about being a specialist in early childhood education. What does that encompass? And then maybe remark on when you started that career to the very end. What were the changes?
Well, actually, I graduated from Iowa State in 1975, and it was the first year that the law took effect that young children, early childhood, were uh, they are eligible and could receive. It was mandated. So
Mm.
I graduated, and there were all these jobs that were open,
Mm,
and I loved special education, not only for the children, because I taught in classroom 20 years, but the other 20 years, I worked in the homes with parents who had birth to 3 children. The youngest child I ever worked with was 2 months of age. It was a child
oh,
with syndrome. No, I take it back. Sorry, not 2 months, 2 weeks of age. I met the
wow.
family. There's so many things that we can do early and for early intervention. And I grew to love the parents. And, I look back at my life with my sister, watching my parents, that gave me such an insight of what the parents are going through, what siblings are going through, that I really, really just loved working with families. It became a passion with me.
Mhm,
Then
mhm.
the other part of my life was I went into school districts or daycare centers, and I helped teachers and parents and students there, especially with children who had some behavior problems.
Yeah.
And so special education isn't just in a classroom. It can be done in the home. It can be done in other sites. And
Mhm.
I
We lost our contact with Anna, but Anna, there we go. Okay, we'll get it back again.
Microphone.
There we go. Anna, we need your mic.
Yes, I just did it.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. What I was most encouraged keeps trying to call me. What I was most encouraged by is the inclusion. When my sister started special education, it was near a furnace room, and they were contained.
Mhm,
And at times, their silverware had to be wrapped differently
mhm,
because
mhm.
they took their silverware out of here, and the other kids took their silverware out of there. When I ended my career, children were being integrated, and the general ed teachers were accommodating. And I saw remarkable growth with
Mhm,
the students being with other children.
mhm.
And the friendships that developed. It was heartwarming.
Neat, neat. May we change subjects? Going back,
Absolutely.
okay, going back into the 50s,
Yes.
and you were on a farm.
Yes.
You grew up on a farm, okay, in Northwest Iowa.
Hmm.
And what were your responsibilities on that farm?
Well, I was the oldest. I had my brother, my sister was younger, and my brother Brian. And so that meant I helped with chores, and I helped with bean walking, for example. I was 6. I remember that. And
Really?
we had a row on each side. And bean walking is where there were no machines that went down. There were no sprays that took care of the weeds. And so you went and you pulled cockleburs mainly around
Mhm.
and you pulled. And so my father had told me, help me bean walk, and you can go to Kenny's Corner, this little place in Little Meriden, Iowa, and I'll get you a malt. So I thought, okay. So I'm walking and I'm pulling, and we did a field, and I said, I'm ready, Dad, for that malt. And
Yeah.
he said, oh, that's when we finish all 3 fields. And I said,
Oh,
what?
yeah.
But I grew to love bean walking. I really did. Because my sister was already ill, it was just my dad and I. And we talked and talked and talked.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yes. What a great place to have a one-on-one time with your parent,
Yes,
with your parent.
with my parents. Yeah. Then we had cleaning chickens. And I have to say, not my favorite thing. If anybody is grew up on a farm, it was butcher day, and I just dreaded that day. I could not watch my dad kill the chickens. I just couldn't. So I'd be up in my bedroom covering my ears, but
Mhm.
then I'd come down, and then it was the awful picking the feathers off the chicken. And I know anybody that has clean chickens will recall that smell when you put the chickens into the hot water. But
Yes.
again, that's why farm life is so good. There was a group of us, and we talked and laughed. And then it was bonding. And then I would take the chickens into my mom and my grandmother so they would vet and clean them.
Mhm.
And as much as they tried, I just never could get to that point. So, but cleaning chickens was another thing that we did at least once a year, sometimes twice a year.
Mhm.
Did you eat chicken for supper that night?
Yes.
Oh,
Really?
you did?
Yes, that's funny you asked that because I tell people that. And what did mom make for supper that night? Chicken. I said, Mom, how can you? I really, but there are times that we ask for hot dogs.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Well,
Yeah,
and I found Jackie and I have did our fair share of cleaning chickens,
that's right.
picking pin feathers. That was the big
Yes,
deal then.
yes.
And I know how particular we had to be because
Mhm.
these chickens weren't just for us. Dad sold those to customers as well. And since in my adult years, I have come to really avoid eating chicken wings because I know that is a really touch. You have to be so thorough in that area
Yes,
in order to clean those pin feathers. But
yes.
and then I still, even now, if I we actually have purchased some frozen chicken parts,
Mhm.
mainly wings, to use to bait some live traps around here. And oh my gosh, I'd open that bag of frozen chicken wings, and there were these little bits of feathers on them, and I think, oh, I'm glad I'm not eating them. But
Well, did not have my
Good.
mother or father around. They would have never allowed that.
Our, our
exactly, exactly.
Well, tell us about your relationship with other family members besides your parents, maybe your grandparents.
Yes, my mother's mother, my grandmother in Germany. I met her several times, but I had a very close relationship with my grandmother Rupp. She lived in Cherokee, and we lived on the home place of where she had. And not a day went by that we didn't talk to her on the phone. Either
Mhm.
my mom or dad checked on her. But part of that relationship was really deep because my sister, when she was ill, she was in Iowa City for a period of time. And so my grandmother came and lived with us. In fact, I learned to make my first cake. I can remember
Mm.
this, a little Jiffy cake mix or like that. And she said, well, you can decorate it. She helped me make it. And I don't know why, but I put dinosaurs on top, toy dinosaurs. And I have no clue why, but she just says I went to the toy box. But she and I were very close. Um, as she got older, I would go and see her and I would stay with her just to help her out. But she really kept things stable when we went through a period of kind of
Mm.
turmoil in our household. And she was loving and kind and just a gracious woman. And I actually miss her to this day. The times that little things will remind me of her. Her aprons, and I wear an apron
Uh,
often. And
yes, yes. Did she use handkerchiefs?
oh yes, yeah,
Oh, tell us about those handkerchiefs because that was so 1950s or earlier.
it was. But I hate to tell you that I kind of collect them off and on because I think they remind me of my grandmother. But they,
Yes.
were cotton and often ornamental. They had the beautiful little designs. Some had crocheted lace around it and done some things. And she always had hankies. Her aprons always had pockets. And sure enough, she would get her hankies out, and it just I just was wonderful. She was a wonderful lady, a wonderful cook. Um, she stayed with us back in the days when they did cataracts. You had to lay flat on your back,
Oh.
and that was way back. And she just, had to stayed with us for over a week, and we brought things to her, and she played games, and she was so sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Anna, what do you remember about your living I'm sure you don't remember about living in Germany, as you were 6 months old when you came
Mhm.
to the United States. But what has your mom shared with you about growing up in Germany, being a German in Europe in that 1950s era?
It was very difficult. There is a story about how I was born. They where they lived, they had a hospital right across the way, and that hospital was bombed. And my mom talked frequently about going to bomb shelters and the responsibility that they had. For example, when the sirens went off, my German grandparents were in the fields trying to get food. They worked for farmers for food. And so their responsibility, my aunt took their elderly grandmother who lived with them to the bomb shelter, and my mother was responsible for her disabled sister who had contracted polio.
Mm.
So, since the hospital was bombed, when I was ready to be born, my mother walked to a barn that was converted into like a hospital.
Mhm.
And so when people say, "Were you born in a barn?" I always say, "Yes, I was. I was born in a barn." So then she sent a telegram to my father, and she said, "It is born. It has black hair. It has blue eyes. It is a beautiful baby." So when he passed out cigars and they asked him, what he had, he said, "I'm the father of an it." So that's been our lifelong joke that he did not know until the wedding came that he had a girl.
And why was it that you were referred to as an it?
I think Germans have male and female does in front of their words, and she just thought she was using the correct word in English. Her English was fairly good. It was not perfect by any means. She has had a lot of funny stories. And so it was hard when she had to go to the consulate to get a passport for me that I was an American citizen, father, GI.
Hmm. Hmm. And
And the first months were extremely challenging for her here.
Oh, I
did
bet.
she know English before she came to this country?
Yes, they had English. It was more, I would think, just basic knowledge, English, and it took a while to kind of get the language. But the one thing she was concerned, being German, coming over here, how people would treat her. But
Mm-hmm.
she said people were very, very gracious to her. If she used incorrect English, they would help her, find the correct word, never mocked her.
Mm-hmm.
She was
Sure.
always grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
Did she teach you German as well?
Yes, she started teaching my sister and I German when we were young. And then when my sister became so ill and there was so much trauma going on, then she stopped. And then it became frustrating for my sister that we were speaking in a language and she couldn't understand it. So I did take a couple years of German in college. So I traveled back to my grandmother in Germany and I could practice speaking.
Yes, yes. Did your mother bring German customs with her when she came to the United States that she then shared in the home?
Yes, and I don't know if it's just a German custom or not, but they were raised, even throughout the war, that your table setting is very particular. And
Mm.
so even growing up, I had to make sure, of course, 4-H also taught you this,
Yes,
but the
yes.
fork on the left, the knife and the
Yeah.
spoon, and you never use plastic and you never use styrofoam. At that time, they may not have had that, but as
Uh,
I got older, and you set it nicely, and you use, people come over, you use china cups, linen napkins, and then of course at Christmas it was very important that she made some of the German foods. And we would sing some German songs. Always Silent Night in German, always.
Ah, yes. And what were some of those German foods?
She would make little Pfeffernuss, those
Okay.
little small ginger snap. But for a while, she tried making Nürnberger Lebkuchen, they're called. They're like a communion wafer. If you go to church, there's that white wafer, and then it had the dough and then a glaze over it. But it never really worked well. So my aunt and uncle always sent us those in the mail, and candles. We
Uh,
had a lot of candles. I think one time she tried to have candles on the real tree, and my dad said, "Oh no,"
Mm,
because they always had real candles on their trees.
oh,
okay, sure.
oat
Mhm.
bomb.
Yes, yeah.
When in Germany, would they usually go into the forest or a road bank or wherever and cut their own tree, or were there places, retail outlets to buy Christmas
I
trees?
don't think there were retail where they lived. There were trees everywhere. There were different paths through all the woods. I'm sure there were just locations, or they had new farmer friends. I can't recall. Even when we went, my whole family went when I was in eighth grade. My uncle had gone and gone to a certain area where there were trees that you could cut. I don't recall any place having trees to buy at that time.
Okay.
And
So what?
we had real candles on that tree.
Oh, really? So, in what part of Germany is this located? Are your relatives located in?
They're located near Nuremberg, Germany, which is more Bavaria. People look up Bavaria, and by Munich and so forth. And from Neustadt's a very small village. And my mom and my dad met in Nuremberg, which was fairly close.
All
Hmm.
right. All right.
Was your mom able to stay in touch with any other brides who married
Yeah,
U.S. soldiers?
yes, that is it's a happy memory for me. Um, many women came around the Cherokee area that were German and from Poland and from Ireland, and they somehow met. And they started what they called a German club, though
Mhm.
there was from all nationalities. No matter who you were, if you happened to come over during that time and you were kind of missed talking about home life back in Europe, they invited you. And that German club is still going on. My mother and this other gal, Annalisa and Rose, started it, and it went for over 50 years. And I'm thinking it's 60 years that this German club has gone on. They became very supportive of each other. And yet, I have to tell you, they were so proud. All became citizens,
Mhm.
and all were very proud of that. And all believed this was now their country.
Hmm.
Sure.
Mhm.
I think that's how it was back then. Is people gravitated to the United States for a purpose of bettering their lives, and they
Mhm.
wanted to identify with United States of America. They wanted to have the freedom that was here and to explore what was available to them. And
Mhm.
that is a very heartwarming part of
Mhm.
people who came who to this melting pot of our country back in
Yes.
that era. Did, in thinking back about the war, and I believe you're referring to World War II,
Mhm. Yes.
did your mom ever talk about the Nazi part of life in Germany?
Yes. Um, my you were required to belong to the Nazi Party. If you didn't, you had your name written in a little black book. There were people all around that had the little black books. My grandparents did not want to belong, but my grandmother did to get food. But my grandfather, who was a carpenter, did not. And they had to be very, very cautious of what they said, and so forth. If you attended school, which my mother did and my Aunt Linda did, you were automatically enrolled in the youth Nazi party.
Mhm.
And my grandmother and my grandfather would tell them, this is not who we are, but to continue on, we need to
Sure.
do this. But they really instilled that this is not who we are. My mother was very concerned. She had two Jewish friends, not siblings. They were two different families. In the middle of the night, they had gone. She never did know what happened to them. And she wished that she knew. She felt so bad. She had always hoped, and she said, prayed that they had escaped. It was challenging, and they were starving. I mean, they went through a period of time. My grandmother and grandfather worked in the field for a half a loaf of bread and milk. And they would tell my mother and my Aunt Linda that farmer had fed them, and they could hear their stomachs just growling. And here was watered down milk and pieces of bread in that. And they had one meal a day some days.
Yeah. Was there ever concern about having enough water to drink?
She never mentioned that, that I don't know. There were rivers right near them, so I really don't know about that.
So you mentioned in the communication about, we're changing the subject now, about the weather. We always, Midwesterners talk about the weather.
Yes.
Were there some strong memories about any kind of weather that you can remember?
Yes, the blizzards. I love the blizzards. I'm probably one of the few, but I love that because our electricity, everything went out. And so my mom would hang blankets from the doorposts in the kitchen. So we were this very tiny kitchen and, trying to keep it warm and so forth, which meant we had mom and dad 24/7 for ourselves.
Oh,
and that meant I dug out all the games I could think of. And though they weren't exactly game players, they were very good. And then mom always had a book or two hidden back in case of these things. So then she would bring out some books that we could read. But I really enjoyed that time. And it was just very simple. We had a lot of discussion in our family. Mom always did the best. My mom was an excellent cook. She could make anything out of anything. And so it was a wonderful time. When I see a blizzard yet, I still have fond memories.
Did your dad have livestock to tend to?
Yes, he had to tie a rope to remember, I think there was a pole outside the one door, and he tied a rope, and then he had to go to the barn is where he basically had to go. And that was scary because you wondered about him, but he was always careful, always safe. And
Cool.
I think we have a part in our book where my parents did that as well. And it reminds Little House on the Prairie stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I almost am kind of sad for the generation now, because they do have electricity go out. It's only a couple hours, usually. And there is just something when you're all snuggled on the floor on blankets. I just really liked it.
Did you have a wood burning stove then?
No, but my dad, on the one snowstorm, we still had a coal. We didn't use it very much at all, but I remembered this. It was coal, and we had a little bit of coal left. My dad thought because it was a major blizzard, like days, and he thought he could get it going again. So he had mom go up and take off that cover, and while she took it off, he started it. He thought she was finished, and she was black. And I rolled. And my mom usually had a good sense of humor. She was not appreciative of my laughing. My brother, I can remember we're all there, young, very young, and we're looking, and she is just black. It was fun. So we just kind of had a lot of blankets. My grandmother was a quilter, so we had a lot of good blankets.
Well, was there a lot of sledding and tobogganing after the storm?
It was always good about gathering all the snow and making it into a tall hill, and we did a lot of tobogganing. And then sometimes he'd pull us in the tractor on the toboggan and the sleds. But I like outdoors, and I'm sure part of it is because of the farm. I used to go in the grove and make playhouses out of the old branches, but it was fun. It was really a good place, and he made it fun. Dad made it fun.
Good.
relate to
Uh,
that.
Anna, we're getting close to the end of our broadcast, and there are always two questions that I like to ask.
Mhm.
Yes. One was, what was a fun memory that you can recall from the 1950s?
A fun or fond?
Fun, Fun.
Okay. A fun memory. I think for me, it was being outside and getting as dirty as you wanted to be. And I mean, I had pet lambs. It wasn't
Uh-huh.
dogs. I had pet lambs, and I'd go in the sheep yard with them, and they'd follow me. They were named. I had Princess One who died, and Princess Two. Both did not understand road use, and
Oh,
I think it was you could be outside and use your imagination, and nature was right there. And I do, the other thing I think that was fun, whether I didn't think so at the time, is that you felt like you were contributing to the family, you know, either gathering the eggs or helping your dad sort hogs, which I was the oldest, had to do that.
mhm.
I kind of look back and I think that was fun because I was with my parents, and it also gave me a sense of pride for my responsibilities to the family.
Sure, sure. The other question that I have is what, and you may have already feel you might already have touched on this, what from the 1950s was influential in your life all through, as you grew beyond that
Mhm.
1950s decade and became an adult?
Mhm. I know you had mentioned that, and I thought I had the answer. And then as I thought about it, the importance of, I think, relationships. Neighbors um, became close friends. When we go now, I feel like, and we go to pick up something at somebody's house, it's like, oh, I don't have time, I got to go. Back in the 50s, I would have to go to neighbors that get eggs sometimes or whatever. And it was always understood that you came in the house and you visited and you got to know each other. And our neighbors were very close, and it was great. And then on Sunday afternoons, either if you stayed home, you know somebody's going to drive in your yard, a family's going to drive in your yard, and you invite them in and you have coffee and you visit all afternoon, and the rest of the kids play. If we went for a drive and we never called, you drive in a yard.
Uh-huh.
I think it's the relationships. I just look back and I see the relationships, the importance of them, how that grew me, whether they were older people or younger people. They were really important to me. And I think it made it important when I had my job,
Hmm.
working with the families. The
Hmm.
relationships are very important to me. And my
Yeah.
friends, I love
Yeah.
my.
Well, our guest today has been Anna Schmadeke from Marcus, Iowa, who was born in Germany and came to the United States with her mom and to meet her dad on a Northwest Iowa farm when she was 6 months old. It's been very interesting, Anna, to hear about your life and about the life of your mom
Mhm.
in that 1950s era. So thank you so much for being our guest today.
Well, thank you so much for asking me, and it's been fun to reminisce.
Good.
You're
It
welcome.
always is. It always is. Yes.
Yes, thanks for agreeing to do this. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Next time, we will have another guest who will have another story about her life, his life in the 1950s, or how that person's life was influenced by someone who lived during the 1950s. You know, we'd love to tell your story too. There is so much information out there about that decade, and it was a unique decade for our country, for our world. And if Jackie and I, the Pfeiffer sisters, can tell that story in a brief amount of time, we'd certainly like to do that. So please contact us either by commenting below that you would be interested in doing that, or that you know of someone who has an interesting story to tell, and Jackie and I will contact you and just check out your story and hopefully have you as a guest on the 1950s Fun Chat. But remember, the 1950s for many people were a time of poodle skirts, cool cars, malt shops, and in Anna's case, she had to walk 3 fields of beans in order to get a malt from her dad, and so much more from the 1950s. And so we'd love to have you join us again next time.
And we'd like to remind you to click on that little red subscribe button and click on the thumbs up button. And thank you for joining us in the 1950s Fun Chat. You may look at this YouTube Central Time, 8 o'clock on Monday evenings. And thereafter, you'll be able to find it on YouTube forever and ever, maybe. Anyway, do go to our website, though, and on the upper right-hand corner, it says 1950s Fun Chat. You can click on there, and you can listen to all of our interviews. And we hope that you will join us and tell your friends, even your relatives, about the 1950s Fun Chat.
Yes, and please feel free to share these episodes too, because what is fun for you and enlightening for you might be, and we hope is just as much fun for your friends and your family. So go to our website, whilethewindmillwatch.com. You can learn all about the Pfeiffer sisters, and Jackie's already covered that. And until next time, we'll say goodbye.